What is up, countries? Welcome to the SitRep for today, the 29th of May, 2023. We're getting through this year. We're eating it up rapidly. I'm correct about the date, yes. I believe I am, at least. Welcome. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope you're fed. And I hope you've got clean drinking water, because if you do have those things, then you're doing better than a lot of other human beings on the face of the earth. That's just I'm not saying like anything's catastrophe has happened or anything like that. That's just a regular day, by the way. If you get access to clean drinking water coming out of taps, if you've got abundant nutrition in your supermarket down the road, then I know it's not always easy for us Aussies to think this way, but we are richer than most of the world. So yeah. If you got that, put a smile on your dial, because it's not that bad, right? Let's talk about the doom and gloom, huh? Let's get into it today. No, today's not about talking about doom and gloom, although there are some things that are doomish and gloomish. The point of this channel is to highlight some of the things that are happening in the world at the moment so that we can best prepare ourselves as preparedness-minded human beings. You, me, that's what we are. We're the kind of folk that look down the pipeline and go, that whistle that's coming down the tracks, that might be a train, so I might want to get off the tracks, as opposed to everyone else who doesn't even hear a fucking whistle because they've got their headphones in, they're staring at their phone, just wandering blindly through life. We want to be more prepared, because the more prepared somebody can be for any kind of disaster, any level of disaster, the better off they will be in that disaster. And as I always say, we want to be assets and not liabilities when it comes to these sorts of issues that are going to happen. And I think, some things are going to start happening in the world. Not start happening, are happening in the world, and they're going to continue to happen. Thanks for joining me on Instagram, on YouTube, on Rumble, if you happen to be into that, which I might be switching over to more in the future. And in fact, the YouTube channel, I might actually be changing the entire format. I do these streams live on YouTube, on Instagram, and then I record them and upload them onto the audio version. I'm considering actually cutting the live version of YouTube. I know I'm not going to be able to see your comments. To be honest, I see about 50% of your comments anyway, because it's tucked away on the screen, so it's a bit hard for me to read those comments a lot of the time. But the main issue is uploading to YouTube. I've been having issues on and off for months now. If you've been watching me, you'd know this. So I'm thinking about recording it live as I'm doing it and then uploading it to YouTube. So there won't be live comments, unfortunately, on YouTube. I'm going to see how that works. And if too many people complain about it, then I might change. But you know what? There's about 3 people that watch this anyway and that regularly follow along. No, I'm joking. There's a couple more than 3, but it's not like I'm super popular. I just want to try and put the better, I won't say best, versions of myself, of these videos out there, because if this was my full-time job, I could probably do a lot better. I'll put as much effort as I'm willing to put in without it negatively impacting my life. I'll put it that way. See about going to Rumble. It's basically a better version of YouTube. So I hear. I've just dipped my toe in it, and in reality, what happens is this gets uploaded to YouTube and then gets sent to Rumble. So I've been thinking about targeting that a bit more. Howdy, Savage the Wild, over in the US. Hope things are going well over there. My first story is about the US, and it's about people who pay tax dollars in the US. Are you tired of your tax dollars being paid to other countries? I would be if I was you. I don't like it when Australia does it. I, in fact, fucking hate it when Australia does it. And a lot of people look at that and go like, oh, that's bad. Like, we should look after the world. No, we should not look after the world. We should look after ourselves, our own people, first and foremost. We should make sure that we're solid. And I know, on the whole, we are solid in Australia, but you want to make sure that things are humming and are really, really good, and that the future looks good for your nation before you start handing money over hand over fist to other nations. Anyway, who's the latest country? Is it Ukraine? Is it Sudan? What poor, destitute country is now going to be suckling at the teat of the US taxpayer. Give me your money. Give it to me. Oh, so delicious. It's me. Oh, what? Yes, Australians are going to be suckling at the teat. The Albanese government, which is our prime minister, for those US folk out there, who, oddly enough, my partner, just this morning, I was explaining the whole voice to parliament thing to my partner, and she said, "Who even is our PM?" And I said, "That's the correct question to ask. Who is our PM?" I describe this person as a wet blanket at best. Like, Australian politics is known for being vanilla, like really, really vanilla. But Anthony Albanese is like, he makes vanilla look like Tutti Frutti. He makes vanilla look like the rainbow. He is the most bland human being that I've ever come across. And it's just like, it's nothing. Like, if you touched Anthony Albanese, would it just disappear into a fucking cloud of gas or something? Anyway, what have they done? They've been doing some deals. Excuse my voice. As I said on the last podcast, I have had the man flu and it's just doing its thing coming out, but my voice wavers in and out. US President Joe Biden's plan promised billions for Australian companies while securing minerals for the US military. So this is a deal particularly between Pentagon and Australian government, Australian government looking at Australian companies. So what they're looking at here is our resources, our minerals. I think actually strategically this isn't like the worst thing that could happen in the world, seeing that the Australian resources sector is heavily reliant on one country in the world at the moment. And it's a country we all know and love, except we don't love them, China. And we're looking down the barrel and we're going, shit, we're probably going to be in a war with these dudes soon. And they're the ones who buy all our resources. This is not a great idea. Who else can we sell to? Well, we've done some deals here with the US. The US has actually stepped in, but it's not just like, oh, US businesses with Australian businesses. Let's grease those wheels and let those things happen. Which, by the way, in order to make that happen, that deal that I'm just talking about, business to business, we wouldn't need to incentivize it so much. We would actually just need to take restrictions off. So the government would actually have to step back and say, oh, I'm going to stop taking, 10% of everything you sell plus 15% in income tax plus blah, 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 and which ends up adding up to a restrictive amount. They wouldn't have to give more money. They would actually have to just step back and go like, yeah, we're going to take those things away and let you guys do what a free fucking market does. Oh, what's that? Australia's got some really, really awesome resources. Huh. Okay, well, let's buy it from there. Where should we get our gold from everywhere? Buy it back off China, dig it up from people in Africa, steal their money. Oh, hang on. What about the second biggest producer of gold in the world? Australia, who's an ally of ours. Why don't we get it from there? Anyway, yeah, Pentagon to secure Australian minerals in Green Deal. The other part of this is the US is looking at its dependence on other parts of the world and going, shit, we get resources and products and things like that from China. We want to secure that with somebody who is in our pocket. US is looking at Australia and going, you there, little cousin, give me your stuff, give it to me. Anyway, it's the US government that's doing this, which i.e. equals the US taxpayer. So thank you very much, US taxpayer, for helping Australia stay as one of the richest per capita countries in the world, as if we fucking need it. Like I said, the mechanics of this kind of make sense in a geopolitical and strategic sort of sense, what we're looking at in the world, to me at least, in the world at the moment. What doesn't make sense is governments handing over taxpayer money. If this was if the shoe was on the other foot here, and we Australian taxpayers were giving our money to US companies, which we do, that does happen, but probably not to this sort of scale. I'd be a bit miffed about that, and I love America, and I love Americans, but I'd still be like, no, what? Why are we doing this? Why has the government always got to get involved in this shit? I've started naming the homeless camps as Elbowvilles. That's all I thought government was good at. Yep. Increasingly taking more of our money. Pisses me off. Right off. Okay. Let's jump into another totally unrelated story. US Food and Drugs Administration, the FDA, has given the green light, basically, the approval for human-based testing, allegedly, the first tests in humans of Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is microchips in the brain. The idea being, well, all these sorts of ideas, right? They're always wrapped in something good. That's something that I consistently notice about this. The New World Order, the powers that be, they never come out and say, "Hey, we're doing this so we can restrict your freedoms. We're doing this so we can get more money off you. We're doing this so we can control you more." It's always wrapped in some sort of great idea. We're doing this so we can destroy your democracy and make sure that there is a part of the democracy and it's written into your constitution that you didn't vote on at all. We're going to call it the voice or the voice to Parliament. And we'll wrap it in something nice. Hey, you know what? Indigenous Australians, they deserve a voice. And people can't really argue. No, they don't. No, fuck those guys. It's like, well, yeah, they do. They do. The same voice that everyone else has, which is a very restricted voice in the form of voting for somebody to be your representative in Parliament. But no, they're special. They're outside of the system now. What? Why would we do that? Based on what? Based on their skin color? Based on the blood in their veins? Like, what? This is a very slippery slope. Why would we do that? Well, like I said, wrap it in something nice, and most normies will just swallow that shit down wholesale. And that's what I think is happening here with Neuralink. I've got some issues with Neuralink, with putting fucking cybernetics into human beings, with making fucking cyborgs. All right, I grew up in the 80s. I watched a lot of fucking science fiction, and I read a lot of science fiction books. All right, namely, you want to jump to Terminator in this, but it's the Borg. All right. The Borg, when I first saw the Borg as a teenager on Star Trek Next Generation, it had a pretty fucking tremendous effect on me. I was like, whoa, that's where this can go. You know what science fiction is to me? Science fiction is always a warning. Science fiction is not just entertaining, funny stories. This is somebody who has actually looked at science, at trends that are happening in society, and says, I'm going to make a allegory of this. I'm going to make a simile of this, or some sort of story that isn't the actual story. You're going to have to read between the lines of this. This is what a lot of people don't do with sci-fi. They don't read between the lines. It's like, what are they actually trying to say? What is the author actually trying to say, or the director trying to say when they're putting this out there? What's the story behind the story or underneath the story? And this is it. It's a warning. Technology interacting with the human body can go too far. We know this. We know this. And this is the kind of thing that worries me about the future. This is the kind of thing that worries me about children. What kind of world are my children going to have? Are they going to be forced into this? Are you going to be left behind if you decide to be a natural human being from here on in? The good thing that they're trying to wrap this up in, Neuralink hopes to use microchips to treat conditions such as paralysis and blindness, and to help certain disabled people use computers and mobile technology. You can't argue against that, can you? No, here's what they actually want to do, because that stuff, that makes that much money. How much of the population is blind? How much of the population has some sort of debilitating mental disease that could be cured by Neuralink? Not fucking much, I'll tell you that much. How much of the population, though, given the choice, would instantly connect like a phone just using their mind? How much of the population would want data displayed on their eyeballs without having to use some sort of other device? Now we're looking at big dollars. This is why Neuralink exists. Not to help out the poor little disabled people of the world. Oh, Saint Elon, thank you. Oh, what have we done without you? These people would have just been killed or something. They would have died. They would have suffered. No, they're looking at the future and they're going, hey, Apple phones, iPhones, but in your head. Basically, that's where this is going. Anyway, it's on its way. Try stopping it. Sci-Fi by Ridley Scott has an AI machine built on algorithms leading a human collective. Falls apart eventually, of course. However, many sacrifices are made. Interesting. Sci-fi by Ridley Scott. Is that a particular sci-fi by Ridley Scott, or is that just all sci-fi by Ridley Scott? Alpha says Elon said one of the kids would be first if need be. The Borg will assimilate. They had to have gotten these movie ideas from somewhere, says Alpha. And I couldn't agree more. Sci-fi isn't just like, I mean, some of it is like not pure creativity, but I think like when I read certain sci-fi, certain authors, especially around the 50s and 60s, I think the authors around there for sci-fi were really putting out some magnificent stuff, some really thought-provoking ideas. And I'm totally blanking on everyone's name now, but do androids dream of electronic sheep, which was the book that Blade Runner was based off. Starship Trooper, actually, like don't judge it on the movie. Go read the book. The book and the movie, I mean, similar sort of idea, I guess, but the book is something totally different. I'm Legend, again, book, movie, like two totally different concepts. Maybe these people were doing LSD or mushrooms or something and made some sort of fucking connection in their head and just came out with this stuff. But a lot of this stuff, I think, is sci-fi. Sci-fi writers are actually some of the more observant and intelligent human beings in that creative sphere sphere of authoring, and they are connecting the dots and they're going, okay, if this and that, then maybe we would do that. The most overt version, I think, of this is maybe George Orwell, where he was very good at doing that, and he wasn't backwards and coming forward about that. He was saying exactly that. He's like, no, look, if we continue doing this, if we continue allowing this particular political and philosophical beast to keep going the way it's going, there is where we end up. We end up on Animal Farm. We end up in 1984. That's what we end up with. So yeah, I love sci-fi. Who doesn't love sci-fi though? I'm always tripped out by that when people are like, "Oh no, I hate sci-fi. It's crap." I'm like, what are you doing with your time? Is there any joy in your life? Okay, this one was sent to me by my bro, my actual bro. Yeah, a bro. It's amazing. He's like me, but like 10 times cooler. Much better. Just going back to sci-fi here. Raised by Wolves is the name of the series. Check it out, Stu. The Ridley Scott one, which does it star Travis Fimmel? The dude from Vikings, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I want to see this one. I haven't seen it. Looks fascinating. It's called Predictive Programming. Weirdly enough, Ready Player One, the book, is major step forward to that sliding into reality. Here's a weird thing about Ready Player One. I haven't read the book. I did watch the movie and I avoided it for ages and ages, just thinking it was like some shitty Disney sort of film. And I watched it and I was like, this is like a warning. This is a direct warning, Ready Player One. Except the people making it didn't realize they were doing a warning. I think they were like, "Wow, look at life and VR and all this is happening." And I was looking at it, going, "This is horrible. Look at the shitty life these people are living, and they have to fucking escape it all the time by going to VR." Like, God, this is scaring the shit out of me. We really need to be careful of VR as well. But I don't think that's what they thought they were doing when they were making that film. I mean, they certainly weren't making the film going, let's scare the shit out of Gads. Let's get him really scared. Yes, Travis Fimmel, crazy-eyed Aussies. Aren't Aussies all a little crazy? Aren't we all just a little bit This is what happens when you grow up in this place, Australia. Okay. This one sent to me by my brother from news.com.au. World's dire future. Students exhibit how culinary scene will look in 26 years. So this is students from Melbourne. Is from Swinburne University, a fantastic establishment. I actually studied in Swinburne University of Technology, which is kind of like their TAFE that goes into university. When I first got out of high school, I studied. Have a guess what I studied. It was just before I joined the military. I actually studied multimedia design. I loved the whole like web. This internet stuff was relatively new. I was into building websites, but mainly I was into character design and video games. Oddly, huh? And then I joined the army. Went and fought in wars. Anyway, back to these students from Swinburne University. They've put together this whole fucking kind of like an arts type installment. And they're futurists. They've painted a bleak picture for the world's culinary scene, predicting how food will be sourced by 2049. We will be sourced from underwater farms and artificial intelligence by 2049 if climate change isn't taken seriously. It's a warning to you all because we're young and we get it, and you old people, you don't fucking understand. You're the ones who ruin the world. They say, sipping their lattes and, living on the backs of all the technologies that got them there where they are. If you took one of these students, this is the thing that I think is interesting. If you actually took one of these students and said, cool, I'm going to cut all carbon because that's what you want. Apparently, the carbon in the atmosphere is what's killing you. I'm going to cut all carbon, all greenhouse gases out of your life. And you're going to have to live without all those things and anything that might have created that. I would give them, I want to be generous here, and I'll say 48 hours. 48 hours until they utterly collapse. If we mix in there too that a lot of them have these very heavily socialist leaning tendencies, and we all say, okay, you can now also live as if you live in any socialist country in history. That 48 hours might become maybe 3 hours. I think that's how long they'd actually hack it. Anyway, students, enough complaining about students. They're not all bad. Sorry about the sunlight coming in. I'm going to change this office. I'm not happy with it. It's a brand new office and I'm already unhappy. They predict in 26 years a large AI creature that absorbs people's food memories before spitting out a petri dish containing that memory will exist, alongside air conditioning jackets and flying cars. did these dumbasses just watch Back to the Future 2? Like, what's going on here? This is how unoriginal our kids are nowadays. I always sit here and lament and complain about movies nowadays or music or anything, and I'm like, none of this sounds new to me. This all just sounds like rehashed shit. Look, that movie plot, yeah, I watched that 12 years ago. That movie plot, oh, I watched that one 36 years ago. It's just the same shit rehashed, and they're coming out like it's all new, but they've chucked the word AI in there now, so it's brand new and it's exciting. Alpha says, we are the carbon they want to reduce. I think you're right. I think you might be right. Air conditioning jackets. I can't believe how many sci-fi references I've chucked out today already. Back to the Future 2. Remember those jackets and the Nikes that... What happened to them? Hoverboards. We were promised hoverboards. I just want the fucking hoverboard. All right? Keep the air conditioning jacket. Meanwhile, extreme weather events and regular disease outbreaks will create a chicken shortage, reducing availability of the white meat. Racist. As well as eggs. One student, Adrian Liu, believes. I can't believe this even made it to a story. This story was really attractive to me because I was like, whoa, okay, here's something about our food system. Here's about some futurists predicting our food system. Then I started to read it. I'm going, these are fucking students. Like, go live some life and actually study something outside of your little fucking miasmic worldview. The only way to counteract this is to genetically modify chicken to make the food source more sustainable and resilient to the environment. Somebody not note that down, all right? I'm going to create a sci-fi movie on that idea alone. All right, here's how the apocalypse start. We start genetically modifying chickens to be more resilient to the environment, i.e., indestructible chickens that are more sustainable. Yep. When uni students use ChatGPT, yeah, this is probably it actually. I've used ChatGPT a smidgen, like not a whole lot. And here's what I came up with. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. This is really interesting and makes a lot of stuff really easy. I don't see it. I haven't quite twigged how it's artificial intelligence yet. To me, maybe I'm asking the wrong questions, but all it seems to be is a really good search engine. It just collects information that's already there and then packages it up to you as if somebody's talking to you. Like, that's cool. Like, I'm not having to search through the websites myself and synthesize that particular information, but or read 3 different blogs on the but or read 3 different blogs on the top 10 best blah, blah, blah. It does that. It just aggregates those things and says, "Here's the top 10 blah, blah, blah." But this is the sort of thing that I would expect from ChatGPT coming out. Intense heat and flooding is also predicted to reduce crop yields by 25%, causing a significant strain on food production as the world population soars to 9.7 billion. A concept known as mind food will also exist, where AI will play a role in visual and sensory consumption. So this is what they're talking about. It's going to figure out how we think and feel about certain foods, and then give us foods that ignite those parts of our brain. So it'll just be some gruel, then you'll eat it and you go, "Oh, it tastes like chicken." Wait a minute, I've seen this somewhere before. Oh, that's right, it was in the first Matrix. Uh, but anyway, I do actually think that underlying this, not necessarily the anthropomorphic climate change angle that is coming from, but I think there is climate change happening, and I think we are witnessing a decline in our food production. So I don't know if it's going where these guys think it's going, but this is something that obviously I believe in. It's something I talk about all the time. Hey, we need to secure our own food supply. We need to light a fire under it and start doing this ourselves. Remember, my 3 R's, one of those R's is responsibility. It's on us to actually do it. All right, what else is happening in the world? All right, let's start with this. China warns against Japan's PM attendance at NATO summit. China expressed caution Friday at Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's attendance at a NATO summit scheduled for July. If you can remember the brief history here, Japan has been more and more involved with NATO over the past year, since probably since Ukraine kicked off. So we're seeing this this NATO in the Pacific idea starting to become a reality, and Australia certainly has its part to play in this. They've been very much linking themselves in with NATO, but we've seen many different nations around this area in the Pacific start to make deeper connections with NATO. We had the NATO Cyber Security Conference, and it was very much involving this part of the world in and around China. Why is China speaking up against this? Because China can see the writing on the wall. NATO was created to stop what was Soviet, USSR, Russian, but they're 2 different concepts, but to stop their power, to create a force against Russia, particularly in Europe. Northern Atlantic is the NA in NATO, okay? Northern Atlantic. So it spans across from the US to Europe, that kind of area there. Obviously, other part of the world down here, Pacific, shouldn't have anything to do with it. But China's reading the writing on the wall here, and they're saying, "Yep, NATO's coming to stop our power." Now that's quite overt. Anyone who looks at even a cursory glance at the news, what's happening at the moment, can see that a lot of countries are worried about Chinese power, the increase in Chinese influence. NATO is creeping on down here. We've got German ships that have been coming down here. We've been seeing India start to do ties into NATO countries. So there's a lot of NATO action that's going on here. I don't know if they'll rebrand NATO, but this is yet another step for that, towards that, I think. Peter Rouse says 90% of people have no idea of responsibility, let alone personal responsibility. Exactly. I think our society is increasingly based on victimhood mentality. And the key part of victimhood mentality is it's not my fault. That's the golden line, I think. It is not my fault. I am the victim. Where people get victimized. That does happen. I don't think we need to hold on to that as our sole core of our being. I preach the opposite. Yes, shit happens. It happens to all of us. It happens to some people worse than others. What can I do? That's the question that I think you should ask yourself. What can I, as an individual human being, do? And then not looking at that and going, oh, I can't do anything because blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, okay, that's not an option. Let's not focus on the not options. Let's focus on the options. What can I do? It might be I'm totally locked down. I'm in handcuffs. I'm blindfolded. I can't hear anything. I can breathe. I can control my breathing. I can control my thoughts, or I can attempt to at least. I can think about how I feel and see if I can hold on to that space. That might be the only thing that I can control, but that at least is me making the effort to do that, as opposed to the other sort of thinking, the victimhood mentality, which is woe is me, help, give me things because I deserve them because I'm a bigger victim, which we see that in our society within individuals, but the problem is that it's not just individuals, it's our entire society. And what we end up having is a society of people who are striving to be the biggest victim, i.e., it is a race to the bottom. Who can be, oh, I'm more hard done by, I'm more hard done by. No, we're more hard done by. No, I identify with these people who are most hard done. No, I'm down here. And we're all racing towards the bottom. Well, who's looking up? Who's striving towards the bright future? Who's looking for the eagles in the sky? Where are our statues of our heroes? Where is that now? That's what we lack. We think we can just rip those things down and it has no effect. It does have an effect. It has a tremendous effect. Responsibility is what we need to really, really encourage within our society. Okay, that's enough rant on that. I've always said this though. If we look at, let's call it emissions, stuff that we put out there, all right? There's three parts of it. There are three parts of how we energize our society, essentially, being that we, use a fair amount of stuff we dig up out of the ground. Now, the big one that everyone focuses on is this climate change, right? We're putting all the shit into this atmosphere and it is changing everything. Maybe that's happening, maybe that's not happening. That is happening. We can see a pattern that's starting to emerge of climate change. Maybe it's caused by us, maybe it's not. So there's a question there. So let's just shelve that one for now. Put that on the shelf. There are the two other things that are actually happening. There's pollution, as in there is destruction and sometimes permanent, or I won't say permanent in the perspective of human beings, destruction of areas. That happens. That's something that we can think about. That's something we can tackle. That's something we can do something about. And then there's, I would say, the most problematic and the most real and provable is the limitation of the resources that we use. I think that's probably the scariest part of it for me. It's not this like looming fucking climate change thing. It's like, no, one day we're not going to be able to do this. If we use all these resources, then they're not coming back, not in our lifetime, not in many, many, many lifetimes. They're not coming back. That is a concern. Seeing our entire society, our entire civilization is based off that at the moment. But they like to focus on this climate change thing. And the problem with that is, I think that if and when we actually go like, this actually has to do with what our sun is doing right now. This actually sits directly in a pattern that seems to fluctuate and move every 6 to 12,000 years, or like minimally every 6,000 years, but maximally every 12,000 years. And it seems to cause a catastrophic event. Oh, okay. So the climate change wasn't caused by us. Okay, we're fine then. That's one of the issues that I think is there in it. That people are so linked on anthropomorphic climate change. They're so bought in on it that if that doesn't prove to be true, then they're going to drop the ball on everything else. Oh, fuck it. Well, if that wasn't true, yep, let's just fucking burn everything and shit everywhere. There's a balance here. Okay, there is a balance. Peter Rouse says the sun has no effect on climate. Oh, wink. Renee C says, how do they explain around the auroras? This victim mentality is out of control. They ignore the levels of SO2. SO2. What's that? Sulfur oxide. No, sulfur dioxide. Am I correct there? Peter Rouse, please inform me. Speaking of energy, good news. Finland, which, is up and around this European area, okay? They've been having some issues with their energy and their inflation, which is linked one and the same, because they were getting a lot of it from Russia, and then they said, Russia bad, we don't want your stuff anymore. And they stopped getting their stuff and then went, oh shit, we don't have enough stuff. We don't have enough natural gas. We don't have enough fuel. Shit. Everything's costing heaps. We can't heat people over winter. Oh, luckily, we had an unseasonably warm winter. But what's going to happen next time? So they're freaking out, and energy prices are through the roof everywhere, except in Finland, where it's actually done the opposite. Their prices went up, and now their prices are going down. That's weird. That's weird. How? They built a nuclear reactor. Oh, what is this new technology that we've never heard of before? The one thing that that we have that is, I would argue, apart from, treating the actual nuclear waste products after the fact, I would say is potentially the most green technology we have, which nations have been refusing to look at and have been going the opposite way. Places like Germany have been closing down their nuclear reactors. Finland said, no, we're going to open up a nuclear reactor. Now, they've got a small population. It's like 5.5 million, I want to say. But they're in energy abundance now. They've got too much energy. They don't know what to do with this fucking energy. They're like, we're making too much energy. Can people use more energy? Can we ship it off somewhere? What do we do now? And amazingly, that's from one nuclear reactor. Which makes me think, would this work in other countries? Anyway, I think that's good news. Electricity prices in Finland flipped negative. A huge oversupply of clean hydroelectric power meant suppliers were almost giving it away. And I didn't snap that story, so I can't tell you what the hydroelectric is about. But the Scandinavian nations have been known to use this type of energy a lot to great effect. And if nations can, then they definitely should. Or should they? Because the water will always be there pouring, right? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, as we're about to find out from Central Asia. This here was a little story that popped up from my main source, and it was about Afghanistan and Iran fighting. And I was like, that's weird, isn't it? What are those two fighting about? They don't usually fight. For those who don't know, Iran and Afghanistan share a border. But you know, they don't usually fight over this border. It's pretty, benign sort of area, really. Well, we waited for a little bit of information to come in, and my main sources sent me this little bit of information that they came across overnight. Uh, Apparently, it's about water. Yeah. So, a major river that actually runs from Afghanistan into Iran has been re-diverted. No, is that right? Diverted, not re-diverted, because they're not diverting it for a second time. It's just been diverted. And so these people in Iran are not getting water anymore. These parts of the world, by the way, I've spent a little bit of time out in the boonies, out in the outback of Afghanistan, and they're reliant on they utilize their water in a different way there than we might hear in developed countries. As in, it's very boom or bust. They A lot of it is kind of snow melt or spring rains, or whatever part of the year they get the rains. But when that water comes, it's just surface water that is flowing through hand dug channels, and quite often they've just got little pulley things that they pull up, and that diverts water into whatever cropland they have. So quite often you're looking over a farm, which I used to call dirt farms because they were just dirt. But allegedly, at the right time of year, when that water came in, they flooded it, things would pop up and they'd have a harvest. So very old school way of doing sort of stuff. I would imagine they would have been doing this 100 years ago. They would have been doing it maybe 500 years, maybe 1,000 years ago, probably doing it the exact same way. Very reliant on this water, though. Well, the Taliban has said, we're going to need that water in our country, and they have dammed it up basically, or diverted that river so it flows into different parts in Afghanistan. And understandably, Iran's not too happy about that. They're a bit miffed about that. We're looking at hundreds of thousands of people in the southeastern part of Iran that basically have no water, just had their water turned off, and they can't do anything about it. This one's interesting because I think this is one of those resources that we need to pay attention to. Water. Water is extremely important. And without it, you can't do anything. You can't live. And thinking about where water comes from, whose countries it flows through. And there's another interesting thing to this. A lot of Aussies won't think about this because they don't border any other country. All right. Things that are here are kind of ours, I guess. We don't have to worry about, New Zealand or Papua New Guinea damming up a river. It doesn't affect us at all. Other countries have to think about this, especially like landlocked countries like Afghanistan. Here's the really interesting thing about this, because I was reading this and I'm like, man, this sounds super familiar to something I was reading not too long ago, maybe like 6 months ago. What was that? Oh, that's right. It was a story about what China has been doing to Vietnam and other nations, but how they've been doing exactly this, diverting their river systems, damming up their river systems, and then essentially cutting off water to other nations so they can't get access to that water that they've had time immemorial. What's that got to do with the price of fish? Well, when we look at when the Taliban took over, who was there on the doorstep, day one, knocking on the door. Surprise, surprise, it was China. And then we see a very Chinese tactic work here. I was just like, that is interesting. How much influence does China have in Afghanistan at the moment? I have no idea, but just from the outside, me sort of looking at dots and things like that and going like, maybe these dots connect. I don't know. It's very interesting. The main point of why I want to bring this one up, though, apart from that interesting little tidbit, is that water and food resources, I guess, I think is going to be increasingly important as we move forward. Now, our ability to secure water. And I don't think people like us in Australia are even immune to this, because there are already laws in place and more that are being looked at. Certainly, this was happening around the time 2019 when we're fighting the fires, where you do not own water on your own property if it is over a certain size. And I can see that size getting smaller and smaller until you don't even own water. If you put a barrel under a spout in a gutter, you don't own that water. Niet, comrade, not your water, our water. That's a communist joke there. Yeah, this is a bit of an issue because, like, you're a farmer. You go, all right, I want to, make sure my cows have water. I'm going to spend the resources, spend the time, spend the effort, build a dam. You build a dam, and then the government, looking over with their satellites or planes, go, that's a big body of water, mine. Mine. Government. They're like a friggin' 2-year-old who just walks around going, mine. Sorry, what have you done for us lately? Except take stuff off us. Yeah. This concerns me. This is the sort of stuff that really, there's certain things that I go, I don't have to worry about that. It'll be okay. There's workarounds, or I have that sorted. But when I think about this sort of stuff, like these really essential life-giving type things like water and food, and I can see where it's heading, this is the sort of stuff that keeps me up at night. Water protection, water sovereignty. Peter Rouse says, I thought that was against international law. Where is the UN? Where's the fucking UN? Where is it? Where's the UN ever? Not enough money in it, I think, for anyone else to step in. Not enough fucks to be given. No, I think the UN has been told. Actually, a comment above here says CIA, which I think is probably more to the point. UN's maybe looked at it and gone, oh, that's not good, and then US has gone, just pump the brakes, man. Just let this one happen. Like, no, but they're shutting off water, and like, just let it happen. Because they don't like Iran. Just in case you didn't know. They've got a bit of beef with Iran at the moment. Ukraine did this also. Wasn't aware of that. Israel's been doing this since the 70s. Yep, it's a tactic that's many. I mean, this tactic has been happening for thousands of years, literally thousands of years, stopping water flow into a certain area to exert influence or create pressure on that population in that area. Yeah, it's been happening for, as far as we know, thousands of years. As long as humans have been around, they need to access water. I read in India, millions of gallons dam was completely emptied to find an iPhone an Indian government official dropped in the water. I haven't read that. Probably it wouldn't be that surprising, though, to be honest. When I think about the context of the planet that we live in and the society we live in right now, that's where we're at. All right, some more things to finish off with here. Polish general previously in charge of Polish land forces predicts an uprising in Belarus and says Poland must be ready to assist. Why are they saying this? What's Lukashenko up to? He's sick. Lukashenko's got the man flu. Maybe that's where I got it. Nah, I haven't seen him at all, ever, actually. President of Belarus hospitalized after meeting with Putin. Who a suspect. No, apparently he was having a meeting with Putin. There was a bit of a medical emergency. He was rushed off to hospital, and they've said that he is in a critical condition. So this has done a couple of things. For starters, it's got the conspiracy theorists abuzz at the moment with like, whoa, what does this mean? What does this mean? Is this overtures for Putin moving into Belarus and maybe saying, look, I'm just going to take over for a minute here while your mate's a bit sick in bed. I'll sort you out. So is it the pretext for that? The other side is saying maybe Lukashenko is being dumped out. Maybe there's going to be a uprising of some sort against him if he does cark it or something. The West is like rubbing its hand and licking its lips, looking like, yes, now's our chance to get in there and flip Belarus. Don't think that'll happen. But interesting stuff. Something worth keeping an eye on because there are shifting winds in this part of the world here. All right, what else have we got to finish off with? UK wants food retailers to impose a voluntary price cap. This sounds terrible. Again, this is one of those things that sounds great, like on the outside, and looks like it does good for people. Like, oh, of course, people are hurting. Low-income people cannot afford to buy food. Here's a simple solution. Cap what food costs. Okay. Can you also cap all the other costs it takes to get it there to someone? Because if you don't do those, then you've got an issue where all of a sudden a retailer might have to lose money selling something. And I don't know, like my maths and my economics isn't exactly master's level, but if you sell something for less than it costs you, you're probably not going to survive in business for very long. That's the issue here. Of course, if that does happening, I'm sure that the UK government has a plan in their back pocket, which is something like, yes, well, we will subsidize you. There you go. Mummy, daddy government has the money to look after you. Whose money, of course? Government's not a business. They're not selling a product. They're taking money off you and me. So then you have to get that money from somewhere. And who do you get it off? The exact people that you're trying to help by putting a cap on food prices. Seriously, it's like politicians or I don't know, kind of this generally the world can't make that logical link. Common sense is unfortunately very uncommon nowadays. And I can see that in plans like this. Bad governance and reeks of desperation. No doubt those that don't comply will be demonized as greedy and be made scapegoats, which has already been happening, okay? And I don't doubt that these people are capitalizing on this, that companies are capitalizing on, the ability to increase their profit margin. Certainly they're doing that. However, in the example of eggs, what we've seen is this huge spike in the price of eggs and then a decrease in the price of eggs when they realize that they can't maintain that high price of egg for very long. So they've had to come back down. And they've done that many times in the past with many different products. This is what happens. There's perceived scarcity or actual scarcity in a market and drives up price, or there's increase in demand or whatever it is that drives up price. Price goes up, less people buy. Company looks at it and goes, okay, we're losing money now because less people are buying it. Okay, drop the price, encourage buying of the product. This is the flow that goes on. Trying to cap a price on something, I think, is a pretty slippery slope, and it's going to end in a bad place. Plans to encourage supermarkets to introduce voluntary price caps. It's failed right there. Why? Oh, okay. So I can make less money off this, and it's voluntary. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. Yeah, I'm gonna cap it. It doesn't matter what Coles is doing. We're gonna do the right thing. Yeah, yeah. I'll believe that when I see it. In a bid to help with the cost of living crisis are being drawn up at Downing Street, according to reports. The scheme would aim to get retailers charging the lowest possible amount for some basic products like milk and bread. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Like I said, good luck to them. If they think they can get that to work, get it off the ground, then I'd love to see how it goes. Chris says new house. Yes, it is. I moved a couple of weeks ago and then went overseas for work for a couple of weeks and then got home and got the man flu. So, for some of you, this is the first time that you'll be seeing this. And as I said at the start today, I'm not super happy with this setup. So, I might set up another office somewhere else. Get this looking a little bit better. All right, that is it for today, my friends. That's all the news. No, there's heaps of news going on. Oh, wait, there was one thing. There was a earthquake in Melbourne. Huge earthquake, 3.8. Not really that big in the grand scheme of things, but it shook some things up. People are a bit weird about it. Like anything within the mainland Australia usually puts the wind up people because we're not directly on a fault line here. Not that you need to be, but we're not. So the frequency of earthquakes is a lot less where we are. I assess earthquakes as a very low risk when I'm looking at the risk um, matrix or what's happening within Australia. And I think, okay, what issues do we face? Bushfire is probably one of the bigger ones. Hurricanes in certain parts of Australia, flooding in many parts of Australia. These things I worry about, and so they're higher on the risk scale. I would say earthquakes and volcanoes. That's at the other end. That's not so big of a threat. So when it happens, I'm always like, oh, okay. But at the moment, I'm there's a fairly sizable earthquake per day at the moment. That's what I'm looking at. This one happened to be in Melbourne. 4.7 in Melbourne. Okay, so I'm reading this from, where was I? I didn't snap where it was from. I think I was on the news app or something on Apple, which is usually news.com.au or ABC, one of those two. It said that there was a 3.8 earthquake on Sunday night, largest in 120 years. But if you say 4.7, Spice Gal, I'll believe you because you're there. We have had 2 earthquakes since Convert. Suspicious. Suspicious. What is going on? Maybe Victoria got it and it's just sneezing. Do you ever think about that? Mhm. Don't look at the science of that. Peter S says, how about removing taxes on real food? What a brilliant idea. What a brilliant idea. What about we just don't tax? But this is going to what I was saying at the first story. It's not like the government needs to continue to give us handouts or help us out with subsidies or anything like that. They actually just need to take things away, take their taxes away. We saw this with fuel prices when fuel prices were going utterly catastrophic, utterly through the roof. And then the government said, okay, we're going to take our tax off it. And people are like, oh, okay, wait. Legitimately, when I said this to a few people, they said, oh, is there a tax on fuel? And I was like, what? Yeah, the government taxes fuel. There's a fuel excise. How did you not know this? And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And they were expecting like 2 cents, 4 cents, and then fuel dropped 25 cents a liter. And they were like, oh, things are okay. And I said, things are not okay. This is a temporary measure. temporary measure where the government has taken its little greedy fingers out of this system, this one system, and they'll put them back in there. And they have. They're back in there. Like a pig snuffling at the trough of the Australian taxpayer. All right. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it as always. As always, continue to do the good work. Make sure that you're looking after your preps, that you are starting to build up systems within your life. And if you can't build up the systems in order to obtain life-sustaining stuff like water or food or whatever it is, then you're building up those resources as best as possible. I think I'm not the kind of person who likes to come out and says, "Oh, it's happening, doom and gloom." But I think, we might be looking at a collapse-ish type event, and it's not going to be what you think it is, not in the movies. It's just going to be things getting harder and harder and ratcheting in while the water boils, and we all kind of go, "Oh, this is bad, but it can't get any worse. Oh, okay, now this is bad, but it can't get any worse." I think that's what's going to happen over the next couple of years. There may be an event. There may be something that actually precipitates it and kicks things off. And I think there could be, like, I think a good safe planning exercise is to try and think, okay, if I can't leave my house for 3 months, can I survive? Can me and my family survive? So that's what I think you should be aiming towards. I'm not saying go out and do that today. I'm saying start. If you don't have anything, go and buy 2 extra cans of beans or tomatoes or whatever when you go shopping. If you've got 3 days, then start looking at a week. Start looking at 3 weeks. Just build it up incrementally. Make sure you're rotating through the stuff as well. Don't be one of those people who just like goes and drops a whole heap of money and buys stuff and sticks it in a cupboard somewhere and never looks at it. Eat the things that you store and store the things that you eat. That is a comment attributed to Jack Spearco from the Survival Podcast, a guy I started listening to back in 2008. And one of the driving forces that really got me from somebody who was just a bit like paranoid and thinking that something was going to go to shit into somebody who's actually a prepper, and not a prepper as in like get your gas mask and your guns ready, but somebody who's like, oh, okay, I'm going to be prepared for as many disasters on as many levels as I can in life. That's what I'm going to do. All right. Stay safe out there, gang. Keep smiling. And until next time, my friends, Semper Paratus.